Hi everyone, welcome back to Beatles on Ukulele with me, Matt Stead. In today's video we're going to have a look at the John Lennon composition this time. We're going to have a look at Dear Prudence. This was recorded in 1968 for the White Album.
In the cool, clear air of Rishikesh, North India, Pathy News reports from the meditation retreat of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the man who, through transcendental meditation, is currently bringing peace of mind to the Beatles.
The song was written by Lennon whilst the Beatles were out in Rishikesh with the Maharishi, and legend has it that Mia Farrow's sister Prudence had become oversensitised by too much meditation, and John Lennon had to coax her out of her room to get her involved again, and he used this song to do so.
Keeping company with himself, it could be part of the treatment, John stalked along the shady paths.
At the time, all the Beatles had out there were two Martin D28 guitars, so they had to think of a way to make their music a little bit more interesting in an acoustic fashion. So they went back to the folk idiom and looked at all sorts of ways of fingerpicking their guitars. And legend has it that Donovan got involved as well whilst he was out there and showed them a few fingerpicking patterns. And you hear it on this song and other songs from the White Album, such as Blackbird. When they did get back to the studio in August, unfortunately at this point there had been a bit of a bust-up in the band over a disagreement over drumming between Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. So if you listen to the original, you can hear Paul McCartney drumming on this one. And the hi-hat work is a little bit tense at times, but I mean, I couldn't drum that well. Because the song was fingerpicked on guitar, that gives us some real possibilities in terms of fingerpicking on ukulele. And one of the things we're going to do in this lesson is learn a really effective but simple picking pattern. The only drawback that we have on ukulele is we can't hit those nice bass notes, so we need to think about things in a slightly different way, and I'll go into that in detail in just a moment. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you, dear Prudence. Won't you come out to play? Dear Prudence, open up your eyes. Dear Prudence, see the sunny skies. The wind is low, the birds will sing, that you are part of everything, dear Prudence. Won't you open up your eyes? Look around, round, round. Look around, round, 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 round. Look around. Dear Prudence, let me see you smile. Dear Prudence, like a little child. The clouds will be a daisy chain, so let me see you smile again, dear Prudence. Won't you let me see you smile, dear Prudence? Won't you come out to play, dear Prudence? Greet the brand new day. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you, dear Prudence. Won't you come out to play? The song was originally recorded in the key of D, but I've dropped it down one whole tone just to make it a bit more simple for us to play on ukulele. So our version is in the key of C. Let's take a look at the basic structure of the song first. It's a lot more simple than it looks. In fact, most of the song is the same repeating 4 chords over and over. In the verses, we're going to finger pick them. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? I'll go over that in a lot of detail in a moment. The choruses start the same way, but with a little refrain at the end. So we still have the same 4 chords. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you. The only difference is we have this refrain at the end. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? And then after the choruses, we go back to that lovely interlude. Just means cycling through the same 4 chords that we play in the verse again. So in essence, we have the instrumental interludes. Then we have a verse and a chorus, another interlude, verse, chorus, and then we go to a bridge. Now this is where things change. These are the only change to the chords in the entire song. And it's really lovely at this point because we have some basic major chords and it breaks from the tension of those verses and interludes, those same tense chords over and over. So we have a lovely C to an F to a G and back again. And then we have an unusual section using chords you wouldn't expect to come up in the key. Again, I'll go over that in a lot of detail, but that's the bridge for you. And then finally another verse, chorus, interlude, and then a verse, chorus to finish. And you'll notice that the last verse and chorus, we're going to really strum hard to really kind of ratchet up the dynamics and make things interesting at that point in the song. So let's take a look at those 4 revolving chords which are used to construct the interludes, the verses, and much of the chorus as well. Here we have an illustration of something called line cliche. Line cliche is where we have an underlying chord that stays underneath the melody, which basically doesn't do much, it just sits there the whole time. In this case, we're going to play a C chord. For the Beatles, because theirs was in the key of D, it's a D major, we have a C major. So we have a C chord being played all of the time. Over the top of that, we have something that I often refer to as like a mini moving melody, a series of notes which technically are changing the chord quality, but you can really just think of them as extra notes to make a descending melody pattern. And that's exactly what we have here. It sounds lovely. So we open up with a C chord, and because the last note we hear is this high C, that's the one that kind of sticks in our ears. So you can think of this first chord as a C with a high C. Then we're going to add a B flat note in. Now we're going to do that not by playing along the A string. We're actually going to do that by playing a B flat up here on the 3rd fret of the G string. And this is a useful tip. Anytime you need to find a note on the G string, know that it's going to be exactly the same note as 2 frets lower on the A string. So the 1st fret of the A string is a B flat, and the 3rd fret of the G string is a B flat. It works all the way up the fretboard. If I was to play the 3rd fret of the A string, I'd have a C, and the 5th fret of the G string, a C. So we're going to add that B flat in on the G string. Now there's lots of different ways you can do this. I find it most comfortable to use my little finger to play the C chord. Then I like to reach up with my 2nd or 1st, whichever feels most comfortable, over here to the 3rd fret of the G string. Just make sure that you're nice and close to the metal fret. We don't want to fall back here. We want to keep it as close as possible to that metal fret up there. Why do I say that? Well, it helps the chord ring out really true, and particularly the note on the G string. Notice what happens as I move my index finger backwards. As it gets towards the back of the fret, I start to pick up buzzing and chucking. And this side of the fret, really nice and clean. So as you play through these chords, try and get whichever finger you use on the G string to be as close to the right hand side. So over here, not over here. Now I think it's really important that you experiment with your fingers to see what feels most comfortable for you, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses in our hands. Some of us have bigger hands, smaller hands, more or less mobility in certain fingers. So the way I've written it is as so. I've used my little finger for this C chord, my 2nd finger over here, adding the B flat note that follows, then my 1st finger here for this A, and the same one again for the A flat. So we have open C chord, and then on the G string we have the 3rd fret, 2nd fret, and 1st fret. And that's our little mini melody. We've got high C in the 1st chord, B flat, A, and A flat. Experiment with those fingers. You might want to try this 1st finger for all of them. You might want to use 3 fingers, like so. You might even prefer to use your 3rd finger down here. So just use my fingerings as a guide and just practice playing through those chords one at a time. Now just some music theory and some semantics for anyone that's interested. You'll notice that I've notated those as slash chords. Slash chords are where we have a chord with an added note. So for instance, a C, and then C with B flat, C with A, and C with A flat. Those are often written as slash chords. Technically, they're not proper slash chords, if you like, purely because in a slash chord, the 2nd note that's indicated, such as the B flat, the A, or the A flat, they should be played in the bass register. And on guitar, they will use the low E string perhaps to get those, or they might even use a bassist to add them. So technically, you can't play slash chords on the ukulele because we can't go low enough. We can't get into that bass register. But to keep things simple, I've referred to them that way rather than giving each chord a different name, which can get a bit complex and hard to write down. In some books, you'll find the last 2 chords in this sequence written as an F chord if in the key of C, or in the original key, a G chord, and you'll have a major 7th and a minor 7th. But that only really works when playing with a bassist. So for our intents and purposes, just think of it as a C chord with line cliche over the top, affecting each of the chords beautifully. I could have renamed those as types of C chords. So for instance, that last one we can think of as a C augmented because we're playing a C with a G sharp added. But to make things a lot clearer and easier to follow, I've kept them as slash chords, just so you can see that mini moving melody going along with the music. So before I teach you that finger picking pattern in a lot of detail, let's just practice these revolving 4 chords over and over. The song's in common time 4/4, so quite simply 4 beats per measure, and each of these chords are going to be held down for 1 full measure. So you can count with me. I'm just doing standard straight 8s. That just means down strums really nice and quickly. It will look and sound something like this. C, add B flat, and A flat, and again. I just keep strumming, and on the G string we have off, 3, 2, 1, and off, 3, 2, 1. Keep that going round, practice with me, and experiment with the fingers that you're using on the G string. Find whatever feels most comfortable for you. And we could do a verse. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? And again. Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day. Fantastic. Well done, everyone. So let's take a look at the finger picking pattern. Coming up with this pattern, I was faced with lots of challenges because obviously John Lennon, when he originally came up with this, he detuned his guitar. I didn't want to detune the ukulele, that gets awkward. Plus he has an extra 2 strings to add to his finger picking pattern. So we're always slightly restricted when we come up with finger picking patterns on the ukulele that are replicating what happens on guitar. So I tried lots of different connotations with these picking patterns, and this is the one that I feel happiest with of all. Here we have a finger picking diagram. Notice that when we display finger picking diagrams, we have 4 lines. Those represent a string on your ukulele, just like you would in normal tablature. And whichever string you pick at that particular moment is shown by a cross or an X. Now, confusingly, the same as with tablature, these strings are kind of upside down in terms of ukulele. So the lowest line is your G string, C string, E string, A string. It all comes back to violin players because when tablature was first invented, the first string that a violinist would hit would be this one here, and the last one would be this one here. And we carry on that concept onto ukulele and guitar tablature. That's why a lot of people think of it as upside down. Historically, that's where it comes from. And then the letters underneath refer either to your thumb or one of your fingers on your picking hand. This all comes back to Spanish classical guitar. So we have T for thumb. Sometimes that's referred to as P in some diagrams, pulgar, because pulgar is Spanish for thumb. I, index or indice in Spanish. M, middle, medio in Spanish. And then the ring finger is more often than not referred to as A, because in Spanish, annular means your ring finger. So T, I, M, A. Now, it's really important to note that you don't have to use the fingers notated, and that goes for almost any piece of music as well. You can find a way that feels most comfortable for you. Many ukulele players, including a lot of Hawaiian players, will only use their thumb and their index finger to pick notes. More classically trained ones tend to use the thumb on the G string, index, middle and ring on these strings. And other songs may require you to use your thumb on the top 2 and these 2 fingers down here. There's no right or wrong as long as you can get into a really comfortable pattern and it feels right for you. That's really, really important. For now, let's just practice this finger picking pattern with a C chord, and I'm going to suggest just as you start off, try using the fingers that are indicated on the diagram just for now so that you can get really comfortable. So notice we have thumb on the G string and then the ring finger picking the A string. And we're going to pick these 2 strings at the same time, like so, with a pinch. Now you'll notice that I'm anchoring my little finger here on the soundboard. You don't have to at all, you can just have it hovering out the way like so. It doesn't really affect the tone on an instrument as small as the ukulele, and I find if I anchor my little finger there on the soundboard, I have something to pivot against when I pinch these strings, but either is absolutely fine. Now, you don't have to have super long fingernails like mine, just the pad of your thumb and fingers will work perfectly fine. The one thing that I do recommend, whether you've got nails or not, is just to bring your fingers back over the sound hole so they're not clattering against the fingerboards. That can be really, really useful, just to bring them back here. The other thing is, try not to use the very side of your thumb to fingerpick, because you'll often find it gets caught underneath the string and you'll get a real kind of twangy sound. So try not to have your thumbs side on like this. The easiest way to counteract that is to get a nice arch in your arm as you're finger picking like so. So then you'll notice that my thumb, I'm using almost like the middle part of my thumb, not the side like this, the middle part of my thumb, which gives a warmer tone, which is really nice. It also avoids my hand accidentally dampening the strings down here, and it also allows the soundboard to vibrate as well. So I like to anchor here, thumb on the G string, ring finger on the A string, and we're just going to pinch both strings at the same time. The reason I like to pick those two strings at the same time at the start of this finger picking pattern is really important. The reason being that we get one note that stays the same, almost like a drone, and then we have another note which moves in descending chromatic notes. That just means a note that is half a step from the last one. So a high C suggested here with a G, then the B flat, A flat. We have that descending chromatic movement. The other reason it's important is you get this lovely Beatles, kind of Beatles-esque clash of notes, and that's really important. When we play this note, a C, and this note, a B flat at the same time, those notes almost create a clash. Being only a whole step away from each other, they almost clash, but it sounds really delicious. So it's really nice to have those notes highlighted at the start of each measure. So we start each measure with our pinch, the outside two strings. Then it's relatively simple. We play through the strings one at a time. C string, E string, A string, and then we come back to the E string at the end. So pinch, C string, E string, A string, and back to E. Now notice there's a slight rest after the pinch and after this note on the E string. Fantastic. Just practice that around with me a few times, holding down a C chord the whole time. It will look and sound something like this. 2, 3, and 4. Fantastic. The brilliant thing about this pattern, which makes it nice and simple, is it fills up a whole measure, or 4 beats, and each one of these chords in the interlude and the verse is held down for one measure also. So basically we play through that pattern on every chord for the interlude and the verses. So we have our C chord, adding the B flat, add the A, and add the A flat. So same thing over and over, and you can think of it in terms of numbers on a G string as 0, 3, 2, and 1. Now this might take a fair bit of practice, but all I want you to do is you can pause the video and just practice that round and round. Until you feel really comfortable with changing those chords. When you get back to this A flat note here, we go back to the start. Open, 3, 2, with A flat, and we keep going round and round. If you're playing along with me and you're letting me take the vocals, or you're playing with a vocalist, you can keep that picking pattern going round and round and it will work perfectly. For me, when I'm singing and playing this at the same time, there's a couple of syllables that really catch me out before the word play come out to play. So quite often I'll leave out the notes on the E string and the A string just at the end of the line. See if you can notice. I'll play in slow motion. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Did you hear that? Same thing on the next line. I just miss out the very last two notes of this finger picking pattern right at the end. It just makes it easier for me to sing. Dear Prudence, here, greet the brand new day. See that little pause? So have a little experiment with that. If a couple of those syllables trip you up or you lose your rhythm at that point of the song, it's absolutely fine just to leave out the last couple of notes and then come back in on the first beat of the next measure. Let's practice that then. I'll play below tempo to make it a little bit easier. We'll play 4 measures as an interlude and then let's try a verse. Come in after 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day. Yeah, really good. So John Lennon wrote this on his own on that Martin D28 acoustic guitar over in Rishikesh. But when they got back to the studio, obviously then they could add the bass to the song and also some really lovely electric guitar over the top. So what happens in the original is that picking pattern carries on going through the entire song, but we get the build up of the dynamics because we have some chugged rhythm guitar, electric guitar chords coming in on the next section, which I've referred to as the chorus. When the Beatles got back from Rishikesh and they came to record this in a studio, John Lennon had the luxury of using George Harrison to put some rhythm guitar over the top of his lovely finger picking pattern. Now, as solo performers, we can't do this, so we have to think of something different. If you're playing this as a duet, one of you could finger pick the entire song whilst the other adds chords over the top, which would be really nice. As a solo performer though, we don't have that luxury. So what I like to do is when we get to the chorus part of the song, the sun is up, the sky is blue, I like to start strumming at that point, and I use the most simple of strums. Largely I'm just strumming all down strums on the beat as so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 times per measure or 4 times per chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's our basic rhythm. Now, if you want to add a few up strums just to thicken it up slightly, that's absolutely fine. You can just touch the strings on the way up, but just keep that straight rhythm. See, I can introduce those up strums at any point. My right hand or my strumming hand doesn't change what it's doing other than just touching the strings occasionally on the way up. All downs, then adding the ups. experiment with how many of those ups you want to add. The more ups you add, the thicker, the more intense the strum. Now, the great thing is that the chords haven't changed at all. So we keep that descending pattern going, doing exactly what we've done with the finger picking pattern. And it will sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you. I'll combine that with the end of a verse with the finger picking so you can see how it really lifts the song at that point. Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day. The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you. Yeah. At the end of each of those choruses, we have a nice surprise. So nothing has changed in terms of the chords at this point in the song until it comes to this line, Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? In fact, the start of that line starts the same as all of the verses. We have a C with that B flat added. Then we have this lovely B flat chord, an F and a C. And it's like the clouds have parted just for a moment. You have that lovely optimistic major chord coming in. It's really spicy. It really plays with our ears. In the key of C, you would expect the 7th chord in the key to be a B or a B diminished 7th. But what the Beatles used to use, this comes from the Mixolydian mode, don't worry about it too much, is they would often substitute the 7 chord for a flat 7 chord, that B flat. The reason it works is that B flat is 4 above the F chord that follows. We get a lovely cadence, it works beautifully, and then we resolve to the C. So that's where suddenly our ears really perk up. It will sound something like this. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Isn't that great? So that B flat you can play 2 different ways. You can either use a mini bar using your first finger to bar the bottom 2 strings of the 1st fret like so, and then reach up and over and up and over. Remember when you're doing this chord to try and have as straight an arm as possible. If you put your arm too far this way, there's not going to be any way that you can flatten down this 1st finger. It's just not going to work. And also it's really bad for your wrist. If you collapse this way, it's going to be really uncomfortable and these fingers are going to collapse and you'll get a chucking sound. So just the right amount of lift so you get an almost straight wrist. Now, of course, you could also play that with a traditional bar chord, which would be absolutely fine, barring the whole of the 1st fret of this 1st finger, and then 2nd finger and 3rd finger like so. Remember, if you're doing that, to have at least a tiny bit of the tip of your finger showing over the top of the string. Try not to do this way. Again, if I lower my finger, I get that crook in my wrist, which is uncomfortable and unnatural. And look, I'm almost creating a kind of circle with this finger, or a semicircle underneath. It's not straight across the frets. Whereas if I lift up, I'll have that tip showing. I'm using the strongest part of the finger, the lowest part, and I'll get a nice clean chord. Remember to get this finger as close to the metal fret as possible, so not over here, right up to that metal fret, and you're really just putting pressure on the lower part of your finger because the top 2 strings, this one and this one physically, are covered by these 2 fingers. So we have that B flat chord, followed by an F chord, and then the lovely resolution to the 1. Won't you come out to play? What I like to do is when I play the F chord, I just hold it down with 1 strum and let it fill up the measure like so. Won't you come out to play? The reason being is that immediately after these choruses, we go to the interlude and then we're going back to a finger picking pattern, which is quite tricky to do, to go from strumming to finger picking. So by just putting 1 single down strum on the F, as well as creating the sense of a crescendo, it gives me time to get my fingers back to that C chord and get ready for the finger picking pattern. So it will sound something like this. Won't you come out to play? So let's try a whole chorus together. Come in after 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you, dear Prudence. B flat. Won't you come out to play? Yeah, fantastic. It can be quite tricky, can't it, coming out of that strumming and straight into your finger picking pattern. But just take your time, really practice that round, take the tempo down, make sure you're really, really comfortable with it. Now that's really tricky to do, isn't it? Coming out of that chorus into a verse and going straight into that finger picking pattern. So it is going to take a lot of practice. Be really patient with yourself. Go way below tempo. It's more important to get the rhythm and timing right way below tempo and then gradually up that tempo than it is to play at tempo too soon and have big gaps and it not sounding right. So be really, really patient with yourself there. Notice that after the second chorus we go straight into a lovely bridge section, and I really love this moment in the original song. John Lennon goes up the fretboard to create some beautiful sounding chords in his unusual tuning. The chords are based on the 1, 4 and the 5 chords in the key of C, all played as major chords, so C, F as the 4 chord and G as the 5 chord. Now, because of that funny tuning and the way he plays up the fretboard, you have some really interesting sounds in this part of the song. I couldn't replicate this exactly on the ukulele. I had to muck about with the chords a little bit to make it sound like the original. So rather than playing a normal C up the fretboard, which would possibly look something like this with the high E note, and a high F up the fretboard, which would look like this, a C major shape taken up to a C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and then F. And a G, of course, you could play the same thing to higher. What makes it sound so delightful in the original is you have some closed notes, notes with fingers on, and then you have some open notes ringing out, and that's what makes it really magical. So that's what I've replicated in our version. Now the finger picking pattern is exactly the same as the verse, so you're going to carry on with your pattern that you were doing before, and we're going to do each of those per chord. Then what we're going to do, rather than doing an F chord like so, we're going to play what is effectively an F add 9. Quite simply, you just add your first finger to the 5th fret of the E string, whilst your little finger goes up to the 8th fret of the A string, like so. And you get the lovely 2 closed notes, the notes that are being fingered, playing against the 2 open strings. And that gives a really what we call a wide voice chords. The distance between the lowest note, the C, and the highest note, this F, is really big. Much bigger than if we're playing, say, an F down here, where all those notes are compressed. It's what makes it sound so beautiful. So this is your shape. We have 5 on the E string, and then 8 on the A string. That will sound like this. And then for the G, we just take that shape up, exactly the same shape, but this time we're on fret 7 and 10. Now technically, because of the notes, that's a G add 11, but just think of it as exactly the same shape that we've moved out. The reason it has a different name is because the relationship between the closed notes and the open notes are different now because it's gone up 2 higher, but just think of it as a type of G chord. So we have this lovely C chord with this high E up here. That's still technically just a plain Jane C chord because the notes that make up a C chord are C, E and G. And as long as you repeat any of those notes, such as a C here, or an E here, or a G here, all perfectly valid C chords. So just a normal C chord. I've put an asterisk just so you know it's different from our normal first position C chord. So this chord to start with. we move up to 8, drop this one down on 5 for the F. Take that 2 higher for the G. And then back to the F again. And we play that combination round 3 times. So look around, round, round. So look around, round, round, round. Like so. Then we have a classic John Lennon trick. He uses some non-diatonic chords. That just means chords that don't belong in the key of C, but they still sound great. We have an E major. To do that, we just bar the whole of the 3rd fret and a little finger up here on the 6th fret. Then we take that up to an A flat chord just by moving that whole shape up to 6, and then little finger is on 9. And then we get the resolution of going to the 4 chord of the key, that's the F chord here. And then the final proper resolution back to the C of the next verse. So that's E major, A flat, and F, all with the same shape. At that point, you're going to keep your picking pattern going. So if I put that whole bridge together, it will sound something like this. 2, 3, 4. So look around, round, round. Look around, round, round, round. Look around. Notice at the end there we go back to that interlude, back to that C chord, and then our lovely descending chromatic line cliche. Isn't that lovely? I think it's such a sweet part of the song. I think the break into those major chords, breaking out of the tension of that descending chromatic movement just sounds really, really sweet. Now, believe it or not, you have all of the tools to complete the song, because once we come out of that bridge, we go to another interlude, a verse and a chorus, exactly the same as we did the first verse and chorus. The only change I make is in the very final verse and chorus, I like to strum the whole thing. And I really like to use a lot of those up strums to really thicken up the strum. And that all just comes back to wanting to add some dynamics. The piece is reaching a crescendo. In the original recording, the drums are really in full flow here. We have a lovely melodic bass line, there's rhythm guitar, and there's lead guitar going on. And it's all pumping, it's all kind of building towards a crescendo. Now, obviously, as solo performers, we have to think of how we can do that on the ukulele to create that sense of dynamic. And the only way we can really do it, I believe, at this point is to strum, and strum relatively hard. So, proper British term now, I want you to give it some welly in that final verse and chorus. Strum that little bit harder. It doesn't have to be a big movement with this arm, just push that little bit harder as you're strumming. I'd also like you to add more up strums as well. So instead of just being all down strums, thicken it up with some up strums. And you can really build by adding those up strums in. It thickens it up, it creates more drama and more movement. What I like to do is as soon as I come out of that penultimate chorus into the final interlude, I like to strum it rather than finger picking it. So from the penultimate chorus, it would sound something like this. Dear Prudence, won't you let me see you smile? Now keep strumming for the interlude. Dear Prudence, final verse. Won't you come out to play? Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day. Now really give it some volume. The sun is up Fantastic. You now have everything you need to work on and complete that song. I really hope you enjoyed that. Some really interesting things to learn there, wasn't there? Line cliche, where we have a chord and then a mini moving melody, which is really sweet. Finger picking patterns for the first time in this course, and really altering the dynamics. Super, super important. And as we go through all of these different Beatles songs, we're going to do them in a different order, not chronological, because that keeps things much more interesting and I can introduce some new concepts with each lesson. And we're going to learn lots of different ways of playing on every single lesson. And I will see you for that next lesson very, very soon. Stay Fab 4, have loads of fun, and I'll see you soon. Yukon, and take care, guys. Bye.
Now, 2 by 2, the world-famous quartet stroll quietly in the lovely meditation preserve. Paul and Ringo shed the cares of their successful world. Close behind, George and John, complete with blanket for even more peace.